Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Coal cars, misdemeanor drugs, and dying younger. Plus this day in history with Elvis is Dead and our song of the day by Ted Leo on your Morning Monarchy for August 16th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Glad you're here. Glad I can get my bed music all straightened out for your Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy. We are streaming live, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Nearly 12 years of independent media brought to you by you. Each day of the Morning Monarchy, we focus in on a different area of the news. Wednesday is not only Hump Day, but it's also Food World Order Day. All the food, health, and environment news we're about to talk about for this next hour. We've tweeted out the stories, and you can find those at the top of the tweets. Spread the link, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Again, we can't do this without you. Hope you're doing well and healthy and safe and sound wherever you are, my friends. Let's glance at the breaking lamestream news before we get into our healthy, delicious, nutritious Food World Order menu. So from what I can gather, apparently mainstream corporate media, who have no problem carrying water for all kinds of war and destruction, they really don't like this current occupant of the White House. False moral equivalency is not a bug of Trumpism, it's a feature. So says the Washington Compost. Op-ed in the New York Times, President Trump cannot redeem himself. And even Australia says White House braces for Trump fallout. Meanwhile, Baltimore hauls away 4 Confederate monuments after overnight removal. Hope Hicks named interim White House communications director as the swamp. It's tough to get a gauge on the level of the swamp because it's constantly kind of emptying and then filling. And we've got even a sort of accidental swamp draining coming up a little bit later in this episode. Black Hawk helicopter with 5 crew members on board crashes off Hawaii. And Obama's response to Charlottesville violence is the most liked tweet in Twitter history. Oh my God, how did we miss that story, you guys? Let's get the fact check on the sidebar. Brexit. What's the government's customs union plan? That's from the BBC News. Would Wisconsin's $3 billion to Foxconn be largest ever gift by any state to a foreign company? That's PolitiFact. Is the accused Charlottesville killer an anti-Trump leftist supported by Clinton and Soros? That's from Snopes. Rihanna spending hundreds of thousands on new wardrobe after weight gain? That's from Gossip Cop. And finally, your fact check of the day. Pompeo distorts China's nuclear policy from factcheck.org. Didn't we do that one yesterday? You guys are running out of fact checks for all your flailing, flaming piles of garbage. So Wednesday is Food World Order Day. Let's dive into it. Let's get a delicious, nutritious menu, and I love being able to transition from one day's news into the next. So on Monday, when we were wrapping up our world news, our geopolitics news, we were talking about that amateur guy that landed a drone on a UK aircraft carrier. So we continued with a little bit of tech news yesterday. And I think we can transition from tech news into food news today as, of course, we head off to Amazon. They're exploring a technology first developed, of course, for the U.S. military to produce tasty prepared meals that do not need refrigeration as it looks for new ways to muscle into the $700 billion U.S. grocery biz.
This frittata might not whet your appetite, but it's Amazon's latest foray into the food industry as the online shop explores new technologies to bring ready-to-eat meals to its customers that are more nutritious than processed foods and have a longer shelf life. Amazon is looking into selling food made with microwave-assisted thermal sterilization technology, or MATS for short, which involves placing food in hot, pressurized water and cooking it with microwaves for several minutes. Reuters correspondent Jeffrey Daston.
Amazon is evaluating this new food technology that promises food that's stable on a shelf for a year. You don't have to refrigerate it, but it is much more nutritious and tastes much better than conventionally processed food.
MATS technology grew out of interest from the U.S. military more than a decade ago to improve the quality of MREs for soldiers in combat. Amazon stumbled upon the idea at the Paris Food Trade Show last year and soon after started working with 915 Labs in Denver, which is commercializing the technology. The dishes would be cheaper to deliver because they do not require refrigeration and, if popular, they would put Amazon at the forefront of changes to the food industry.
Amazon is in a phase of experimentation to figure out how it's going to win in the $700 billion U.S. grocery market. It plans to buy Whole Foods right now. It also is experimenting with a checkout-free grocery store called Amazon Go in Seattle. It's even just filed a trademark application for a meal kit service. So MATS is just another way that it potentially could be at the cutting edge of the food industry. It could be ahead of others.
Consumers should not expect to see MATS dishes on Amazon at least until 2018. 915 Labs says the food is still pending FDA approval.
There you have it. There's Reuters' take on Amazon looks to new food technology for home delivery because we always need decade-old technology that, of course, came from the war machine. The world's biggest online retailer has discussed selling ready-to-eat dishes such as beef stew and a vegetable frittata. I like hearing frittata because that's the word they use in the league for calling you a dummy. They're going to roll it out as soon as next year, officials at the startup firm marketing the technology told Reuters. Now, we were actually, of course, in Seattle last week. The specter of Amazon looms large. It's why everybody moves there. It's going to be the company store. They're going to build towns for people that work at Amazon. You're going to owe your soul to the company store. The dishes would be easy to stockpile and ship because they don't require refrigeration and could be offered quite cheaply compared with takeout from a restaurant. If the cutting-edge food technology comes to fruition and Amazon implements it on a large scale, it would be a major step forward for the company as it looks to grab hold of more grocery customers shifting toward quick and easy meal options at home. Delivering meals from their giant patented floating airship where they'll dispatch, of course, as we've joked, not only the drones to give you high fructose corn syrup garbage chemical food, but they'll also have the defibrillators for when you cack out. It could also implement Amazon's planned $13.7 billion purchase of Whole Foods and Amazon's checkout-free convenience store, which is in the test stage. The pioneering food prep tech known as microwave-assisted thermal sterilization, or MATS if you're nasty, was developed by researchers at Washington State University, which I can only wager is massively funded by Amazon, and is being brought to market by a venture-backed startup called 915 Labs, based in Denver, which is where our military-industrial complex connections come in. The method involves placing sealed packages of food in pressurized water and heating them in microwaves for several minutes. Genius. Unlike traditional processing methods where packages are in pressure cookers for up to an hour until both bacteria and nutrients are largely gone, the dishes retain their natural flavor and texture. They can also sit on a shelf, which of course makes them suitable for Amazon endless storage. They obviously see that this is a potential disruptor and an ability to get a private brand uniqueness that they're looking for, says Greg Sprague, former Walmart stores executive and now a head of startup working at MATS Technology. They will test these products with their consumers and get a sense of where they would go. Amazon declined to comment. Sprague's company, Solve for Food, plans to acquire MATS machines from 915 that can make 1,800 packages an hour. The company aims to use that machine at a new food innovation center in Northwest Arkansas, right near, of course, the headquarters of Sam Walton's Walmart, which featured for many, many years on their board Hillary Clinton. 915 Labs also has an Arkansas connection. It's designing the beef stew and other dishes with a chef at the Bentonville-based Brightwater Center for the Study of Food. Walmart, meanwhile, did not comment on whether it's looking into the technology, which you, of course, would have to be a fool to think that they're not. So those are the big boys, and they buy up everything. Now, they hardly innovate. That's how these things go. They just buy up their competition. They do it again and again and again. Now they've realized their competition is you just making food for yourself at home, so they're going to buy that up as well. Now, you know I rag on the food kit services, and I know, though, that some of you use them. You might have busier home domestic lives than I do. They might really hit the spot. But it's just finding those things that they identify it, and they grab it up. So that's how we start our Food World Order coverage here, and we are streaming live, foodworldorder.com. Hey, huge thanks to Johnny Vedmore on the tweets. Thanks for sharing this show. We appreciate you. Now, a story we actually talked about a couple of months ago, but I think is worth glancing at again. Matt Agaris wrote it for Activist Post. There's a lot of give and take in our Food World Order stories. The Food World Order giveth and the Food World Order taketh away. Across the globe, an awakening is happening in which people are realizing the power of growing your own food. Detroit, Michigan is an example, or Detroit, as I heard it pronounced last night. I did my freelance video gig. People have turned many areas, essentially brought to ruins through government neglect, into food oasis. Edible landscapes are increasing throughout the world. However, when the state gets involved, self-sustainability through community gardening can often be thwarted. The residents of Sunshine Coast, and now when we mentioned the story, we noted that this is pretty close to where our buddy Brock West lives. Their city council just unapologetically laid waste to a 7-year-old organically grown fruit tree forest spanning 11 streets. A single complaint about a permit sent the city council into a fruit-hating tyrannical whirlspin, eventually leading to the destruction of the entire project. As ABC News out of Australia reported, the Australian community was at the center of a 6-month battle with the council after a complaint was made. The council then ordered residents to obtain public liability insurance and a free permit in order to keep the trees on the footpaths. To be clear, these trees were not planted by some rogue farmer on private property without the owner's permission. The community banded together in a hugely popular project known as Urban Food Street, UFS. Urban Food Street grew immensely over the years as residents volunteered their own sidewalk areas for the trees to be grown. More than 200 people participated and, of course, benefited from the fruit forest. According to some residents, they were entirely unaware they were permit and issue and insurance requirements until the city council showed up with trucks and mulchers to chop all the trees down. Chris White, chef and resident within the UFS precinct, said this thoughtless destruction of food was done to put in a sidewalk and put the residents in check. His quote, "It's a way now that they can put a concrete footpath in, and it's a show of force." I think it's the kids that are going to be impacted greatest here because they've nurtured these trees and now they're not here. So maybe this is actually in some ways a positive thing, as we were heard remarking back at the stunning conclusion and actually even the build-up to America's Next Top President. Maybe it's good for every generation to get their heart completely crushed politically because they realize that ain't going to be your savior. It's best to find it out when you're young. Good Lord, I know we feel very much sorrow and pity for the people who still believe this charade. We've only been watching it for the last 8 to 16 to 20 years. You guys have been watching this for 40 years and you still believe this BS parade. It's hard. The divide is growing greater and greater. Now, we're going to see these things happen in a lot of different towns, but I think we're going to see a lot more pushback. A lot more pushback. You're also going to see states who don't have time or the filthy lucre to deal with this garbage. They won't have the zeros and ones to pay the little Eichmanns to go out and bother your food garden. But let's head up to Montana. Story shared by our buddy Matt up in the great state of Idaho. Crews are working to clean up several cars of a Montana rail link train hauling coal. Blew off the track Sunday night, sending several thousand tons of coal near or into the Clark Fork River. The westbound 120-car train derailed around 11 p.m. Sunday night, about 10 miles west of Knoxon, Montana, along the river, so said Jim Lewis, spokesman for Montana Rail Link. 30 of the cars carrying coal tipped over, spilling their load. There were no injuries. Lewis stressed the cars were not hauling hazardous material, just a little bit of coal. What's a little bit of coal in your drinking water? Oh, I don't know. Why don't you ask all my friends and family back in West Virginia? Still, Shannon Williamson, executive director of Lake Pend Oriel Waterkeeper, was critical of pollutants entering the river. In a statement sent Monday, she said the Clark Fork River has overcome decades worth of toxic pollution from mining activity to provide some of the best fly fishing in the country. This incident is yet another reminder of what's at risk when we transport tons of uncovered piles of dirty coal along environmentally sensitive water bodies. Why sacrifice our clean water when we've got better, cleaner options for powering our homes and businesses? Because it has to be black and white. You have to have all or one or nothing of the other. There's not some middle ground where we can say, oh, I don't know. Why don't you make sure the trains aren't shit? Why don't you enforce the regulations that are already there instead of piling on more regular? Oh, wait, I know, because you want that money. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Bill Nagaley, emergency manager at the Sanders County Office of Emergency Management, said no structures were damaged in the derailment. He was unsure Monday if coal was confirmed to have fallen into the river. The cause of the incident is under investigation. All services on that rail have been suspended, and an estimated time for rail traffic to resume has not yet been determined. 10 of the 30 cars were cleared from the tracks by Monday afternoon, and crews plan to have all 30 cars cleared by midday today on Hump Day. Now, our buddy Chef Jake is up in that area. Now, I would even ask him, am I even pronouncing that remotely correct? Pend Oriel? It's about an hour away from where our buddy Chef Jake is. And the Spokesman Review has the photo. It's a little grainy, but you can pretty much see it's a giant fucking train wreck. It is a literal train wreck. Pend Oreille. So that's your latest coal car derailment in the Northwest. Montana, just almost count as part of the Pacific Northwest. Just slightly. But you don't get more Pacific Northwest than peak Portland, and of course the great state of Oregon at large, where a new bill signed by Oregon Governor Kate Brown on Tuesday, that's last Tuesday, makes personal use possession of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and other drugs a misdemeanor and not a felony. Oregon just joined a handful of other U.S. states in defelonizing drugs under the new law, which was supported by law enforcement groups and takes effect immediately. So that's the first question. You go, oh, the cops are into it? Joe Meza, owner of Amazing Treatment, a rehab center in Salem, applauded the move. She's seen the damage caused by drug addiction in her 30 years in the field. There's a huge crisis out there, and locking people up is not going to work. Looking to kick their addictions, patients ascended a flight of stairs into Amazing Treatment, located above a Mexican restaurant and a barbershop in downtown Salem. Inside the center, someone had drawn a syringe on a whiteboard with the words, "No more." Above that was a quote by Nietzsche. Many are stubborn in pursuit of the path they have chosen, few in pursuit of the goal. Meza said imprisoning first-time offenders with limited or non-existent treatment opportunities is not a solution, but the goal can be achieved with treatment for 6 months to a year with support from recovering addicts and training in how to remove oneself from the environment that led to the drug abuse, like living in Oregon. Like a circle of addicted friends or relatives. Jailing is not helping the problem, Meza said. All you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it and ripping it off when they get out of jail. Now, that part is right. You want to be a criminal, go to jail. You want to be dumb, go to school. You want to be evil, go to church. Among the bill's supporters were the Oregon Association Chiefs of Police and the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, which said felony convictions include unintended consequences, including barriers to housing and employment. Two things we have quite the deficit of here in Oregon. But the two groups, in a letter to the state senator who backed the bill, said the new law will only produce positive results if additional drug treatment resources accompany this change in policy. Reducing penalties without aggressively addressing underlying addiction is unlikely to help those who need it most, the groups warned. Another measure appropriated $7 million that can be used to pay for drug treatment. That's your money. You know, we recently passed a bill here in Oregon where all that extra tax on the cannabis, you know what it goes to do? It goes to help out fucking drunks. Why am I helping to pay for your addiction problem? So I can already just sort of glance over and see at the chat that you guys have already figured this out and you see where this is going. Lynn County District Attorney Doug Martini had tried to convince lawmakers to dump the defelonization of dangerous drugs from the bill, which also targets police profiling. To change the classification of this behavior from a felony to a misdemeanor is tantamount to telling our school children that tomorrow it will be less dangerous to use methamphetamine than it is today. Those who have a prior felony conviction won't be afforded misdemeanor consideration, womp womp, nor will people who have 2 or more prior drug convictions or possess more than user amounts. See, there's always a little bit of fine print. The devil is in the details. The new law also directs a state commission to develop methods for recording data concerning police-initiated pedestrian and traffic stops. The measure is aimed at ensuring police aren't stopping people based on racial or other profiling. Probably stopping them to see if they can make some money off of you. So let's glance over at the chat and see if we can lay all this out. Now they can keep track of open drug addicts and their suppliers. And lots of money owed. Rehab is a racket, so they just figured out sticking addicts into drug-infested jails isn't the best idea. Salem's got a lot of junkies and politicians. But private prisons are guaranteed 90% capacities. And this gets to the heart of it. And our friend Citizens Gateway kind of points this out. They can keep track. So this is a very easy, you can look at this and say, yes, that's a positive change. It's preferable, which is the way Vin Armani describes it. So let's look at this from a different angle. Drug possession is now a misdemeanor in Oregon, but who does that really benefit?
Oregon passed through their legislature a bill to do what they called decriminalization of the possession of controlled substances. We're talking
Interesting.
ecstasy, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines. I took a look at it. Initially, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oregon's going to do a decrim. You know, they already have legalized weed. And it took the penalty down from a felony for those down to a misdemeanor.
Wow.
Didn't decriminalize, took it down to a misdemeanor. And I know, on face value, you look and you're like, oh, well, that's so much better to get a misdemeanor rather than a felony. And it got me really to thinking, and it goes to some of the solutions, or at least some of the potential actions that I'm sure we'll talk about with Michael Bolden, and that we've talked about with other people who support state solutions, either through the Libertarian Party or like Adam Kokesh running for, president. I'm really wrestling as a principled individual, as someone who considers himself an anarchist and a voluntarist. I very much wrestle with the idea of not principles, but preferences, that if the state's going to be involved, how do we decide? Because clearly, some laws are preferable to other laws, right? Like, certainly if they said, well, we're going to reduce the penalty for possession of cocaine from death, we're going to hang you, right? Or we're going to shoot you with a firing squad. We're going to reduce that penalty to, 3 years in prison. You say, okay, that's good. I think that's a much better solution. Preferable.
Yeah.
It still is not recognizing the principle that I'm allowed to put whatever I want in my body.
Right.
That the state doesn't own my body. The state is still claiming ownership of my body. But then you ask, okay, well, they reduce it to a misdemeanor. Now, most misdemeanors are going to be pled down. If the person's got no previous problems, they're going to go on probation. They're going to pay a fine. And you start to think but doesn't that actually benefit the state? Because a felony, putting you in prison, now you're just a complete drain on state resources, right? They have to pay they have to pay to house you. They have to pay to feed you. All of this. But if you pay a fine and you go, the state actually makes money.
Wow.
As opposed to the felony. So you start to say, well, is this actually better? It's better for the state.
Yeah, and it's congruent to what they would do.
And the state is an institution with a monopoly on violent force. So you're like, is the alternative that's financially better for the criminal the better alternative? This is what I struggle with. Because obviously for the individual involved, it would seem on its face that, getting a misdemeanor charge, not going to jail, is way better than going to jail for years. And it's clearly better for the state that they don't have to put you away. But it's better for the state.
Yeah.
That leaves the state more money to do other shit.
Yeah. And it's that other shit that gets bad. And as we've talked about before, Oregon Governor Kay Brown, as well as Ellen Rosenblum, take huge amounts of money from Eli Lilly. They take big pharma money. They take big food money. They take multinational corporate money. So the state wins again. Hey, that's a great idea. My buddy won't get thrown in jail. But the state now makes money off of you. So there's arguments about drugs going on in the chat. All drugs are bad. All drugs are great. That's your decision to make. But it's a pretty easy, obvious decision that most of the massive big pharma drugs are the destructive ones. The ones they're throwing people in jail for are the ones you don't really want to mess with in the first place. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Hump Day, Wednesday, Food World Order Day. It's August 16th, 2017, and I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, coming to you, as always, from the Peak Portland, Oregon studios, where we've been giving you Media Monarchy since 9/11/2005, and we are streaming live right now at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Hope you share the link with a friend. And let's continue to talk about Big Pharma in a sort of roundabout sort of way, and this was the indirect way sometimes the swamp gets drained. The head of drugs giant Merck, Ken Frazier, has resigned from President Trump's American Manufacturing Council because of Charlottesville.
After President Donald Trump's response to the violent protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, one pharmaceutical CEO is distancing himself from the White House. Merck Pharmaceuticals CEO Kenneth Frazier resigned from Trump's American Manufacturing Council on Monday. In a statement, Frazier said, "America's leaders must honor our fundamental values by clearly rejecting expressions of hatred, bigotry, and group supremacy. As a matter of personal conscience, I feel a responsibility to take a stand against intolerance and extremism." The president was widely criticized for his initial public response to the violence, in which he didn't explicitly acknowledge white supremacists were involved.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
Soon after Frazier announced his decision to leave the council, Trump tweeted that the CEO will have more time to lower rip-off drug prices. Trump spoke out against rising drug costs many times before becoming president.
They're getting away with murder. Pharma has a lot of lobbies, a lot of lobbyists, and a lot of power.
But by June, several outlets were calling the administration's proposals friendly to the pharmaceutical industry. Several hours after Frazier resigned, Trump made a public statement explicitly calling out the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists.
A woman was killed on Saturday when a car rammed into a crowd protesting a white supremacist rally. In quite the show. Following the death, Mr. Trump was criticized for not specifically denouncing the far right. Mr. Frazier said, "I feel a responsibility to take a stand against intolerance and extremism." I don't know if you get the nice, deep lulls from the head of a pharmaceutical company talking about the sanctity of life and intolerance and extremism. It's base, but I can get a hoot out of it. America's leaders must honor our fundamental views by clearly rejecting expressions of hatred, bigotry, and group supremacy, as we heard in the clip. Yes, the art of war is working against the U.S., and it's working quite successfully. Again, everything we say and play will always be included in the show notes. We try and cram a lot of news into your hour-long daily blast, so you can follow the links. It's all in the show notes. The General Assembly of the United Nations is scheduled to consider establishing a World Food Safety Day when it meets in September. A recent draft resolution adopted by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, back at their conference on 7/7, was forwarded to the Secretary General of the United Nations, quote, "with a view to having the General Assembly of the United Nations consider, at its next session," typo, declaring June 7 as World Food Safety Day. Ren Wang, director of the FAO's Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection, told conference attendees, quote, "World Food Safety Day will raise awareness of the global threat posed by foodborne diseases and reinforce the needs for governments." They could probably just stop right there. It reinforces the need for the state to protect you from poison chemical garbage foods that you shouldn't eat in the first place. Beginning again. World Food Safety Day will raise awareness of the global threat posed by foodborne diseases and reinforce the need for governments, the food industry, and individuals to do more to make food safe and prevent these diseases. International food safety leaders have said they believe a recurring World Food Safety Day will increase consumer health protection and reduce foodborne illnesses. And of course, all the little organizations, all the little groups, all the little think tanks, all the NGOs, they get their nose in the trough. That's what this is about. You don't have to have giant United Nations mandated, hey, food needs to be safe it up. Okay, thanks, buddy. It's all about the graft. It's all about the schemes. It's all about creating new organizations. What does it say at the end of the Oregon drug story? The new law also directs a state commission to develop methods for recording data. That means more bureaucracy. That's what government loves. We quote it all the time. That's what they talk about on House of Lies. That's what Don Cheadle says. The real action comes in getting them on the tit after work. The money just keeps on flowing. Interesting article on Eater.com asking the musical question, what brands are actually behind Trader Joe's snacks? Mark Gardner was a former VP of marketing and an advertising consultant before taking a job as a crew member at Trader Joe's in Kansas City 6 years ago. Despite being a bit overqualified, like pretty much everybody you'll work with at a grocery store, at least it used to be back when I did, He had an agenda, a personal mission to uncover the secrets behind the grocery chain's huge success. In the end, he walked away with enough intel to write a book, revealing some of the business's branding tactics. But even from the inside, Gardner could not unveil Trader Joe's biggest and best-kept secret, the hush-hush identities of the companies that produce the grocer's beloved products. As a private brand, the California-based Trader Joe's orders most of its products from third-party manufacturers like Pepsi and Snyder's, which agree to sell some of their items under the Trader Joe's label. Many of these brands sell the same or similar products under their own names for a higher price. The catch is that Trader Joe's and its suppliers all but swear to keep the agreement secret. Suppliers aren't allowed to say they supply Trader Joe's products, and Trader Joe's will never willingly talk about who their suppliers are. On top of that, Trader Joe execs and owners are notoriously tight-lipped about operations and hardly speak to the press about business. Requests for details, especially about manufacturers, are generally declined. So here's the big secret. If you don't know this, when you're looking at brand-owned, store-brand things, Brand X, it's the same shit you'd buy, just with a different label on it, a different face, a different mask. Imagine if you like this analogy, when you're choosing between America's next top president. It's the same state-loving, murderous garbage, but sometimes it's got Cool Ranch, and then other times it's got whatever. That's how this trick happens. Now, we don't shop at Trader Joe's, and I understand probably in lots of other towns it might be the best choice you got. We have a lot of choices here in Portland, Oregon. Trader Joe's is pretty far down the list of places we would shop. Why would I shop at a place owned and started by German brothers who wrap every piece of produce in plastic, when I can shop at a place that was started by Oregon families who stock local produce that isn't all wrapped in plastic? So again, there's, like we talked about yesterday with some of the food apps, there's no reason anymore. The excuse of ignorance doesn't fly. You can find out not only what's in your food, but who makes it and why and who's actually profiting from it. Damn, a lot happened while we were off. Did we not talk about the settlement of pink slime? Now, if we talked about the ABC News pink slime settlement, we only spoke about it in, hey, that trial's done. Okay, they wrapped that up. I think the part we didn't know, and the part that I can report for you now, was the money part. Marion Nestle asked the musical question, are we done with pink slime? 177 million says yes. That's actually kind of chump change. Remember pink slime? Of course we do. That's the pejorative name given to mechanically tenderized, finely textured beef, an ingredient added to meat products. Its maker, Beef Products Incorporated, BPI, sued ABC, Disney, for defamation. They settled out of court in June for $177 million now, according to Business Insider. The terms of the settlement were not immediately disclosed. Disney paid BPI $177 million to settle the pink slime lawsuit that claimed a story ABC ran in 2012 misled viewers and caused hundreds of layoffs. Walt Disney's quarterly earnings report revealed that the company spent $177 million, quote, in connection with the settlement of the litigation last quarter.
ABC News is ready to move past its lawsuit with a meat processor. The Walt Disney Company revealed it settled a controversial defamation case for at least $177 million. The settlement comes after South Dakota-based Beef Products sued ABC for $5.7 billion over a series of reports in 2012. The news network used the phrase pink slime to describe an additive that the cattle industry calls lean, finely textured beef. The term pink slime was first used by a government biologist who argued the additive was not real ground beef. The series of ABC News reports on the topic sparked a national outcry over the product, forcing the industry to stop using it and led Beef Products to close a number of its processing plants. ABC News has not retracted or apologized for its report, which can still be accessed on its website.
So, of course, not only everything we say and play included in the show notes, but also in this article on foodpolitics.com. That's been one of our bigger sources now for hashtag Food World Order. Marion Nestle has all of her stories going all the way back to December 30th, 2009. The latest recall, mechanically tenderized beef. That's nearly a decade ago. Those are the slow grinding wheels of justice. Now, in addition to all the action going on, again, take a week and a half off, a lot can happen in the world. Now, that's also the tendency that kind of gets us addicted to a lot of these things, that you can't turn away for a moment, that you constantly have to check and see what's going on in the news. It's nice being away from it. Yes, I was actually able to do it, be somewhat off-grid, and not look at the news for day after day after day after day, and realize things are going to be okay. One of the biggest Food World Order stories going, though, in the time since we've been off air, all about the eggs. Experts say the risk of getting sick from an egg tainted with insecticide is low, but that hasn't stopped stores in Germany and the Netherlands from stripping them from supermarket shelves or prevented other European food safety agencies from issuing warnings. The story about the illegal use of the insecticide fipronil, 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 in spray to rid hens of ticks, fleas, and lice has gained traction across Europe. Fears about the safety of an everyday food staple, along with some less than optimal public information, have combined to cast a shadow of suspicion over the humble egg. Amsterdam shopper Carla Spreekmeester said Friday that she only buys eggs from stores selling organic products. I take it seriously. I'm not scared that I'll collapse if I eat the wrong egg, but if you can prevent something... Fipronil is commonly used by veterinarians to treat fleas and ticks in pets, but is banned by the European Union for treating animals like chickens that are part of the human food chain. The EU said contaminated eggs have been found at producers in Belgium, France, Germany, and the Netherlands. It's believed that fipronil got into the food chain when it was illegally added to a product used to spray poultry, and the impact for egg producers has been staggering. Since July 20th, Dutch farmers have destroyed millions of unsellable eggs and culled about 1 million hens. So says Henny de Haan of the Dutch Union of Poultry Farmers. Nobody has been reported to have fallen ill as a result of eating the tainted eggs, however. People are very susceptible to negative information, says Jan Willem van Proegien, a social psychologist at the University of Amsterdam. People are very attuned to perceive and respond emotionally to negative information, such as potential health hazards or other threatening stimuli. In recent days, Dutch authorities blocked sales from about 180 infected farms treated by a company suspected of illegally using fipronil.
Across the Netherlands, Belgium and Germany, millions of eggs have been recalled from warehouses and shops. Approximately 180 Dutch farms have had restrictions imposed preventing them from moving eggs, manure and birds from their premises.
These eggs I can no longer sell. My company is producing about 40,000 eggs every day. That's about 300,000 every week.
The farms concerned are believed to have used a product called fipronil in the poultry house to treat red mite. It's classed by the World Health Organization as moderately toxic to humans. It's not authorized for use where animal produce is destined for human consumption. Criminal investigations have been launched in Holland and in Belgium, which has halted production at some farms. Questions are being asked about why the alarm was not raised sooner.
Let me again remind you that we are talking about the same 3 member states that are concerned. And they notified the system just to alert and to share the information so that everybody knows that it's now also up to the Swedish, Swiss, French and to the UK national authorities to check, because all these eggs are traceable and trackable.
Food safety authorities in the UK were informed over the weekend that eggs imported from Germany could be dangerous. The British Egg Council said in a statement, "We are not aware that any of the affected eggs are on sale in the UK, but consumers should look for the British Lion mark on eggs to ensure that they are buying safe British eggs." The Food Standards Agency says some eggs from affected farms did reach Britain, but none are currently on sale.
So there you have the massive egg scandal going on over in Europe. Fear spreads over tainted eggs despite low risk to consumers, so says the Associated Press. Now this is what they're talking about. It's a low risk in low doses. But like the George Carlin joke, scientists have just figured out that saliva causes cancer, but only when swallowed in small amounts over a long period of time. That's how that works. People are right to be worried about what they put down their gullet and what they feed to their family, and you're treated like you're a freak. You're an idiot. You're a worrywart, alarmist. Let's get our last few Food World Order stories in a sweeping legal fight that could affect drinking water supplies for thousands of Sacramento area residents. 2 water districts near the old McClellan Air Force Base are suing the feds for $1.4 billion to clean up cancer-causing chemical hexavalent chromium from the area's groundwater supplies. Thanks, military. The lawsuits filed by the Sacramento Suburban Water District and the Rio Linda Alberta Community Water District named the U.S. Air Force and 10 major firms that were involved in supplying chromium products and chemicals to the base for decades as workers there performed aircraft maintenance and other little Eichmann duties. Officials with Sacramento Suburban, which serves 175,000 customers just east of the old base, and Rio Linda Alberta, which serves about 15,000 customers to the west of the base, say the water they currently are providing is safe. The water is safe to drink. But their lawsuits and claims say they will need $1.4 billion to clean up polluted wells, install treatment equipment, and replace wells that have been decommissioned because of the presence of the chemical, which is known as chromium-6 or chrome-6 and was the subject of a film you might remember from Steven Soderbergh called Erin Brockovich. What is Erin Brockovich involved in now? Trying to stop Nestle and trying to stop communities from adding fluoride to their water. She's been up here in peak Portland. Sidebar, I wouldn't be surprised if not long after we move out of Portland, they will successfully weasel through and put fluoride in the water. Just a wild prediction. So there's another situation where the military has filled your communities with chemicals and lead and poisons. And you got to beg and beg and beg. And then what are you going to do? Sue the government? Yeah, where are they going to get that money from? You, sucker. So it starts to turn dark for our last few headlines on the Food World Order. When Mary Grams lost her diamond engagement ring in the garden in 2004, she thought it was gone for good. This week, it was found on a carrot plucked from the soil on the family farm. The picture is amazing. It basically looks like a wedding ring is strangling a carrot. It still fits. Diamond ring missing since 2004 turns up on garden carrot. That's, of course, happening up in Canada. Speaking of finding old stuff, Antarctic Heritage Trust conservators found a 100-year-old fruitcake among the artifacts from Cape Adair, made by Huntley and Palmer's. The fruitcake is still wrapped in paper and encased in the remains of a tin-plated iron alloy tin. The cake probably dates to the Cape Adair-based Northern Party of Scots Terra Nova expedition back from 1910 to 1913, as it has been documented that Scott took this particular brand of cake with him at the time. Although the tin was in poor condition, the cake itself looked and smelled almost edible. Conservation treatment involved rust removal. You got to take the rust off of your cake. Chemical stabilization and coating of the tin remnants. Deacidification of the tin label. And some physical repair to the torn paper wrapper and the tin label were also carried out. The cake itself is in excellent condition. So, fruitcake is stored after 100 years, and as is noted in the chat, it'll still taste like shit. Now, y'all were talking in the chat a little bit ago about bugs, about serving up some bugs and eating some bugs. I got some for you. Or rather, Switzerland does. Their first insect-based food aimed at humans will go on sale next week following a revision of Switzerland's food safety laws. Their second largest supermarket chain, Coop, or Co-op, C-O-O-P, announced it would begin selling an insect burger and insect balls based on protein-rich mealworms. The products, made by a Swiss startup called Essento, will be available in a handful of Co-op branches, including Geneva, Bern, and Zurich, as of August 21st. Switzerland is the first European country to authorize the sale of insect-based food items for human consumption. Swiss food safety laws were changed last May to allow for the sale of food items containing 3 types of insects: crickets, grasshoppers, and mealworms, which are the larval form of the mealworm beetle. These insects, long used in animal feed, must be bred under strict supervision for 4 generations before they are considered appropriate for human consumption. Local production will thus take a few months to get started. In the meantime, imports are possible under strict conditions. The insects must be raised in accordance with the Swiss requirements at a company submitted to inspections by National Food Safety Authority. So you see how all these things happen on every different scenario. Oh, we've made it more free, except we've not. We've created more government bureaucracies. more inspections, more authorities. And hopefully you don't miss the irony of these things long being used in animal feed, because guess what? You're the feed now, you're the stock, you're the herd, you're the sucker. Eat it up, yum. And finally, the perfect story to transition into Thursday's Holy Hexes news heads us over to Bloomberg, who reports that steady improvements in American life expectancy have stalled and more Americans are dying at younger ages. But for companies straining under the burden of their pension obligations, the distressing trend could have a grim upside. If people don't end up living as long as they were projected to just a few years ago, their employers ultimately won't have to pay them as much in pension and other lifelong retirement benefits. State wins again, kids. The only winning move is not to play. In 2015, the American death rate, the age-adjusted share of Americans dying, rose slightly for the first time since 1999, and over the last 2 years, at least 12 large companies from Verizon to General Motors have said recent slips in mortality improvement have led them to reduce their estimates for how much they could owe retirees by upward of a combined $9.7 billion, this according to a Bloomberg analysis of company filings. Revised assumptions indicating a shortened longevity, for instance, led Lockheed Martin to adjust its estimated retirement obligations downward by a total of about $1.6 billion for 2015 and 2016, they said in their most recent annual report. So that's from Bloomberg. That's another fantastic way that shows the more you give them their money, the more you willingly pay for them to kill you, you're going to pay them twice. They get you coming and they get you going. It's just like we talk about with the drugs. Same places that get to lord over the prohibition now get to flip a switch and make all kinds of filthy money off of the exploitation. Clean your pineal gland and have clarity. That's the best way to wrap up our Food World Order coverage, as was said in the chat. That's a lot to think about, a lot to chew on, if you will. And again, everything we say and play always included in the show notes. The stories we talk about, we tweet out ahead of time. And if you just look at hashtag Food World Order, it is one of the most informative hashtags I got going. And again, the news is brought to you by you. Also, of course, thanks to Food Safety News and Marion Nestle. Unfortunate last name. You can find about all the recalls, all the strange food stories. It is massive. And so I hope you check that out and continue the research for yourself. Food is the way we are winning. Food is the solution. That's the health-oriented way that removes all the other battles. I don't need to go put on some stupid outfit and go yell in the street at people who are only arguing for more, bigger, different flavors of government they like. We got to learn our way forwards ourselves, and hopefully we're doing that with our own independent communities like this. And I love that people are being able to meet in my chat, and they're meeting up in real life. IRL, in meat space, if you will. You're like me. And that's the name of our song of the day that we'll go out with in just a few minutes. Brand new music from Ted Leo. I got to see him just a few weeks ago as he was touring and playing with Amy Mann. He has got his first new record in about 7 years. And we got the first taste of it coming up in just a few minutes. But of course, let's take the always important stroll down this day in history. Past is prologue, my friends. August 16th, 1841, U.S. President John Tyler vetoes a bill which called for the reestablishment of the Second Bank of the United States. Enraged Whig Party members riot outside of the White House in the most violent demonstration on White House grounds in U.S. history. So far. August 16th, 1858, U.S. President James Buchanan inaugurates the new transatlantic telegraph cable by exchanging greetings with Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. However, like most government boondoggles, a weak signal forces a shutdown of the service in a couple weeks. August 16th, 1927, the Dole Air Race begins from Oakland to Honolulu, during which 6 of 8 of the participating planes crash or disappear. Fine early work from the fruit industrial complex known as Dole. August 16th, 1930, the first color sound cartoon called Fiddlesticks is made by Iwerks. 1946, mass riots in Calcutta. More than 4,000 people killed in 72 hours. August 16th, 1954, the first issue of Sports Illustrated published on this day. And on August 16th, 1962, Pete Best, booted out of the Beatles, replaced 2 days later by Ringo Starr. August 16th, 1966, the House Un-American Activities Committee begins investigating Americans who have aided the Viet Cong. Not sure if Jane Fonda's in there or not, but the committee intends to introduce legislation making these activities illegal. Anti-war demonstrations disrupt the meeting, and 50 are arrested. August 16th, 1974, on this day in New York, the Ramones made their debut at the Country Bluegrass and Blues Club, you know it as CBGB's. And it was the week I was born, 40 years ago. Elvis Costello released his debut album, and popular music icon Elvis Presley on this day dies in Memphis, Tennessee at the age of 42. The death of the king of rock and roll brought legions of mourning fans to Graceland, his mansion in Memphis. Doctors said he died of a heart attack likely brought on by his addiction to prescription barbiturates.
This is the ABC Evening News with Harry Reisner and Barbara Walters. And tonight, Howard K. Smith in Washington.
Good evening. Barbara is on vacation. Elvis Presley's family and friends and fans assembled in Memphis, Tennessee through the night and into today. The crowd outside the Presley home was estimated at 10,000 this afternoon, and units of the Tennessee National Guard were activated to help keep order. The funeral is tomorrow.
I think Elvis brought the most joy to the people of any one artist because he brought everything. He was pop, rock, country. He gave them the release of the tension. The teenagers at that time were under a lot of pressure when he came on the scene. And Elvis's music gave release to that tension.
Guitarist and record producer Chet Atkins says Presley did more than influence music trends and hairstyles. He also helped make Nashville a place the record industry couldn't ignore.
With Elvis, it was something that actually happened. There was no hype there. It happened, and it happened in spite of the people in New York and the Brill Building and all those places, and I'm not trying to sound prejudiced, maybe I do, but until Elvis came along, the music business was mainly controlled from the Brill Building in New York. And he changed all that, thank goodness. Now you have places like Nashville and Florence and Memphis and everywhere.
Today's Studio B is a museum room full of memories of the songs that made Elvis Presley a superstar. Tonight, it will be filled again with musicians, many of them influenced by the magic that Presley created here, and hoping it will work again for them. Bob Brown, ABC News, Nashville.
Love those old news clips. Actually missed a chance to go to Graceland. We were on a road trip back in 99, and we were having car trouble. I was like, oh man, we're not going to get to stop at Graceland. I was so close. I barely saw it. Saw the gates, I think. I think that clip also makes the great point that Elvis, with the help of Sam Phillips and Sun Records, helped break the monopoly of the Brill Building songwriting creation factory up in New York. So Elvis died on this day. August 16th, 1983, Paul Simon and Carrie Fisher are married. They divorced 2 years later. August 16th, Madonna and Sean Penn are married. They divorced 4 years later. That's pretty good. I thought it was much shorter than that. And that's the first entry of Madonna doing stupid things on this day. August 16th, 1987, Northwest Airlines Flight 255, a McDonnell Douglas MD-82 crashes after takeoff in Detroit, Michigan, killing 154 of the 155 on board, plus 2 on the ground. August 16th, 1989, a solar flare from the sun creates a geomagnetic storm that affects microchips and even leads to a halt of all trading on the Toronto stock market. August 16th, 2003, a U.S. postage stamp featuring Henry Mancini was unveiled. The design showed Mancini conducting while tiles of his work scroll past on a screen behind him. August 16th, 2008, finally, the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago is topped off at 1,389 feet, at the time becoming the world's highest residence above ground. Holy moly, quite the day on Media Monarchy a decade ago today. Massive stories. One of which is about the Simpsons movie, as it was about to be released. Reviews of that, How Great Thou Bart. And the other 4 stories. Padilla convicted of terrorism support. Jose Padilla convicted of federal terrorism support charges after being held for 3.5 years in the case that came to symbolize the Bush administration's zeal. Published in Media Monarchy a decade ago today, clergy response teams to quell unrest during martial law. Now, of course, that is a classic InfoWars story, but it originally came from KSLA. It's all about Romans 13. Also published, new TSA agents check for danger in flyers, facial expressions, the announcement of behavior detection officers. And finally published to my own website a decade ago today, Media Monarchy's Google Video account canceled. Thanks for your email. Despite repeated warnings to cease uploading videos in violation of our program policies, we've found that you've uploaded additional videos which are also in violation of our program policies. Oh, everybody's whining today about YouTube demonetizing, blah, blah, blah. You guys get with it. I got shut down by Google a decade ago. Your problems aren't new. Celebrating birthdays today, August 16th, T.E. Lawrence, Charles Bukowski, Fess Parker, Edie Gourmet, Bill Evans, Robert Culp of Greatest American Hero and I Spy, Frank Gifford, Julie Newmar, Billy Joe Shaver, Barbara George, Kevin Ayers, A Soft Machine, Bob Balaban, Leslie Ann Warren, Carol Mosley Braun, Portland's own U.S. Rep. Earl Blumenauer. Late great Stooges drummer Scott Ashton, born on this day, Kathy Lee Gifford, Canadian director James Cameron, George Galloway, NXS guitarist Tim Ferriss, and it's Madonna's birthday. It's also Angela Bassett's birthday, Timothy Hutton, Vanessa Carlton, and Franz Ferdinand bass player Mr. Robert Hardy, all born on this day. As we start to wrap up this episode, we head to our song of the day. It's called You're Like Me from Ted Leo. It is his brand new crowd-sourced, crowd-funded, self-released Kickstarter album. It's going to be called The Hanged Man, and it's coming out self-released September 8th. This is the first new music from Ted Leo in 7 years. You might know him touring around, playing in The Both with Amy Mann. And that's what wraps up this episode. You're Like Me by Ted Leo. That does it. That's your Food World Order coverage. I really hope you'll tell a friend about Media Monarchy. We are independent, non-commercial, alternative media brought to you by you. As I've noted recently, you don't see us jumping on bandwagons. You don't see us freaking out. You don't see us changing our mission. We try and keep it true. It's brought to you by you. That's your Hump Day Wednesday Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy for August 16th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato for MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you from the bottom of my heart for listening and taking part. And reminding you, as always, like Jello Biafra said, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
2 o'clock, another Monday at war with a brain that's keeping one eye open. Break to the vacuum that your nature abhors. You're like me, you're like me. No elbows even if you open the door. You won't sleep even if part of you's open. Afraid that you won't have control anymore. You're like me, you're like me, you're like me, you're like me.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.